Everyone, Prime Minister Trudeau is set to ban plastics, so says a lot of the rumors on Twitter and other places that I've read this morning, so that'll be interesting to see. Well, and here are the memes that are already being made about it, which is hilarious. Mr. Scheer is tweeting out his plan, and he's doing all of these policy speeches, and I find this interesting. I'm going to read this out, and I'm going to turn this way down so you can hear me read it out. And I'll read this too. As Prime Minister, says Mr. Scheer, I will be committed to an immigration system that is safe, orderly, and compassionate. I will set immigration levels consistent with what Canada needs, and just as importantly, who needs Canada. Two issues I have with this. Number one, the UN uses the same words in the same order for their safe, orderly migration compact, which is interesting to note, right? Like is that done on purpose, or was that just, something you guys were kicking around in the Conservative HQ office there? It's weird. And the second one is, why won't Mr. Scheer commit to a number? I know that I don't want the increases that the Liberal Party is promising. I also know I don't want a vague person who won't commit to a number taking the Prime Minister's office, because my question is, why won't he commit to a number? He said before that he doesn't want to degenerate into an auction or a lottery or something about the actual number, right? Like changing it into an auction on Twitter or something to that effect. And I can't get behind, and I mean, clearly I'm not an Andrew Scheer supporter, but I can't get behind leadership who won't take a firm position on a number. It's incredible, because the provinces rely on the numbers coming from Ottawa. They need to know, how many are we going to get, or how many approximately, or something to that effect. It is very important because it affects our social services. It affects our things at the municipality level. It affects things at the provincial level. It makes things cost more. The illegal border crossers impacted Canada quite a lot. $200 million for the province of Quebec for housing and clothing and putting these people up. And that doesn't include healthcare and education. Same for Ontario, $200 million. And that was 2018 numbers. I don't have updated numbers, and it's still a problem that isn't being fixed. And I'm diatribing a lot here, but my point is, the number matters, and it matters that you're not taking a stand on it. Okay, I'm going to read this out loud, this meme, this video, and here we go. It says, Justin Trudeau says diversity is our strength. But I think he's missing the big picture. The reason why waves and waves of immigrants from all corners of the world have chosen Canada. I'm going to pause this in between because I just think this is so weird. But the waves and waves of immigrants? Like, is that the messaging you want to go forward with this on, like, Conservative Party of Canada? Waves and waves? I just cringe. I cringe. It is because we are free to worship and free to speak and free to believe. Free to speak. Well, I suppose you're free to speak. I guess if your name is not Mr. Cooper, I guess he was free to speak. Yes, but he wasn't free to have his words kept in the official record. Let's just delete those. And anybody want to vote against that? No silence from the Conservative Party? Do you guys want to go on national talk shows and talk about how a miscarriage of justice and a miscarriage of the truth it is to just erase somebody's words? No, you don't want to do that either. You'll leave that to Mr. Bernier? Okay, no problems. We can do that. But my goodness, CBC News is reporting Scheer strips Tory MP of committee role after confrontation with Muslim witness. And we're going to listen to it. But it says Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has stripped MP Michael Cooper of his spot on the House of Commons Justice Committee as punishment for Cooper's angry confrontation with a Muslim witness in hearings dedicated to online hate. Earlier this week, Cooper told Faisal Khan Suri he should feel ashamed after he drew a link between Conservative commentators and the online history of mosque shooter Alexandre Bissonnette. And I did 2 really in-depth videos about this, so I'm not going to rehash, but we're going to listen to exactly the angry outburst from Mr. Cooper. And you be the judge. Does this sound like an angry guy to you? It doesn't sound like an angry person to me right now.
First of all, Mr. Suri, I take great umbrage with your defamatory comments to try to link conservatism with violent and extremist attacks. They have no foundation, they're defamatory, and they diminish your credibility as a witness. And let me, Mr. Chair, read into the record the statement of Brenton Tarrant, who is responsible for the Christchurch massacre. He left a 74-page manifesto in which he stated, "Conservatism is corporatism in disguise. I want no part of it. The nation with the closest political and social values to my own is the People's Republic of China, close quote. And I certainly wouldn't attempt to link Bernie Sanders to the individual who shot up Republican members of Congress and nearly fatally killed Congressman Scalise. So you should be ashamed. Now,
So I'll leave it there, but link is in the description. And I find it interesting to note as well, this is the Justice Committee impaneled for investigating online hate speech, and the manifesto itself, which was banned, made illegal in New Zealand, was posted on Facebook. It is the definition of online hate speech. How dare Mr. Cooper come to the Justice Committee on online hate speech prepared with online hate speech? And then he had the audacity to correct a witness who said conservative commentators making those comments in the online world have a direct impact on real world murder, were his words. If you want to go back and watch my other videos, just check in the I don't know if I'll put the link in the description, but just check in the back catalog. It's interesting that we can't talk about online hate at the Justice Committee panel for online hate because the witness was a Muslim. Are we not allowed to talk about Hamas or ISIS or the Muslim Brotherhood because we might offend Muslim people? Oh, this video is going to be demonetized now. But seriously, really, I mean, are we not allowed to talk about this stuff? Yes, that's true. YouTube will demonetize me, but apparently on the House floor. But yes, in Canada, according to Andrew Scheer, we are free to speak and free to listen and free to worship. Sorry, back to this. Worship and free to speak and free to believe because we are open to the persecuted and the opposed, oppressed and the broken. Sorry. It is because we are equal in opportunity and in value before the law. It is because we are all these things that we are diverse.
Is the result of our strength. And our strength is and always has been our freedom. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Right. I mean, I just can't take it seriously. Not in light of the actions that Mr. Scheer has taken as a leader. I don't believe it. And I also don't agree with it. Our diversity is not our strength. Freedom is our strength in Canada. And freedom of speech should be being defended by the leader of the opposition, not being doubled down on and having people punished and having their words expunged from the official record and having absolute stone silence from the leader of the opposition when that happens. Because that shouldn't have been allowed to happen. Mr. Cooper came prepared and you just let it go. Another win for the Liberals. CBC News is reporting, and this is the G7, and this is the final story for this morning. But Trump arrives late and leaves early as G7 leaders talk gender, oceans, and climate. After summit's trade-heavy start, Trudeau shifts conversation to other global issues. After an opening day dominated by trade talk, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau shifted the G7 conversation to other pressing global issues on Saturday, climate change and empowering women, but at least one leader opted to skip part of the day's meetings. U.S. President Donald Trump left La Mele, I don't know where that is, Quebec, early before G7 leaders were scheduled to have a working session on protecting the world's oceans and redoubling efforts to stave off catastrophic climate change. But Trump caused a stir even before his early departure by arriving late for the gender-focused breakfast session billed by Canadian officials as a chance for leaders to draft concrete actions for the G7 to advance gender equality and women's empowerment. I scroll down. Trudeau appointed the Gender Equality Advisory Council, co-chaired by Hudden and Melinda Gates. Yeah, Hudden, I don't know who that is. And co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to advise him on recommendations to make Saturday's meeting with other world leaders. The council suggested, among other things, funding for, quote, developing and conflict-affected countries to improve access to minimum of 12 years of free, safe, and quality, quote, gender-responsive education. Yeah, I'm not sure I feel comfortable about Canada advocating for that. That's weird. Trump ducked out mid-morning to begin his nearly 20-hour journey to Singapore, where he's expected to meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on June 12th, a tête-à-tête designed to encourage the rogue state to end its nuclear program. Before his departure, Trump held a wide-ranging press conference in which he repeated his position that Canada and other U.S. trading partners must eliminate trade barriers, including supply management for Canada's dairy sector, if they hope to achieve new trade deals with the United States. Final communique uncertain. At most G7 summits, the assembled leaders generally sign off on a communique committing the respective countries to a series of objectives. With Canada as president of this summit, Trudeau and his Sherpas, negotiators in the language of global forums, have settled on 5 broad themes for this year. I find this weird. Why isn't it cabinet? Why isn't it Canadian representatives? Why is it Sherpas? Why are we passing off our UN presidency, the responsibility of running this meeting, to global Sherpas, the negotiators on the global forums, rather than having Canadian people do that? Maybe it's my misunderstanding, and I'm fully willing to accept that I don't know what exactly goes on at this level of government intergovernmental negotiations. Like, I've never been to one, right? So I don't know how it all works. But again, if you're hosting this, and it says in this article that Trudeau is, shouldn't the elected Canadian people have a say? Like, they're not these global negotiators? Maybe it's my own ignorance, and please forgive me. I'm letting you know of my own ignorance here. I don't want to accuse them of doing something that maybe is totally normal and something that should be done. So I don't know, but that seems strange to me. Okay. Back to this. So there are 5 broad themes that the Sherpas and Trudeau came up with: are investing in growth that works for everyone, preparing for jobs of the future, advancing gender equality and women's empowerment, working together on climate change, oceans, and clean energy, building a more peaceful and secure world. A senior Canadian official speaking to reporters on Background Friday conceded the U.S. has been non-committal about putting its signature on a final communique, but they will not let U.S. insistence derail the agenda. It is potentially embarrassing development for the Canadians, and a sign Trudeau couldn't persuade all of his G7 counterparts to embrace unity. But until recently, G7 summits didn't have to contend with the likes of Trump, who has made it a hallmark of his presidency to reject the established orthodoxy. Yes, blame Trump. It's his fault. Right. I scroll down. Quote, "I won't prejudice the outcome of the negotiations and discussions that are still happening. Our Sherpas are working around the clock extremely hard, and that hasn't changed. There are disagreements with the U.S. in particular on a number of issues, but we've been really realistic about that from the beginning," the government official said. "The objective is always to reach consensus as much as possible, but not gloss over any really significant differences that we're unable to resolve," they said. Trump himself said Friday, quote, "I think we'll have a joint statement," when asked if leaders could come to an agreement. After the UK's recent push to have Commonwealth countries sign on to a single-use plastics ban, things like straws and coffee stirrers, G7 leaders will also discuss the proliferation of plastics in the world's oceans. Canada will advocate for a plastics charter at the summit, Paris-style agreement for the cleanup of ocean garbage, and to divert the 8 million tons of plastic that enters the world's oceans each year. I've done in-depth reporting about our plastic and the fact that we ship a lot of our garbage to China in a plastic Ponzi scheme, basically, that makes up about 8% of, it makes up a small amount of businesses, but it ended up with us having to ship back a ton of garbage from the Philippines, because that's basically what's happening. And that's why a lot of the plastics are ending up in the oceans, because we're shipping them to countries that don't have any environmental protections. So maybe we should fix our own problem and deal with our own plastics within our own country, rather than shipping them to Asia and then being like, you know what, guys, we can help solve your problem. Fix what's happening in our country before we start pretending to the world that we can fix all of their problems. That's like what I wish our government would do. That seems commonsensical to me. My goodness. Okay. Rather than pushing for a Paris agreement that is non-binding, that everybody will go, oh yeah, okay, great idea. Are we just going to keep sending our plastic to China? Yeah. Okay, great. Glad nothing's changing, guys. Thumbs up. Morons. Okay, back to the article. Environment Minister Catherine McKenna has said the charter will focus on high-level policy approach that includes targets for reducing the amount of garbage in the world's oceans, that asks individual nations to come up with domestic plans to meet those targets, works with industry to develop less harmful products, and which funds developing nations to create better waste disposal systems to keep plastics from ending up in the water. How about we stop sending them the plastics in the first place? How about we deal with our own plastics here? Seriously, rather than sending money there. Oh, you've got a lot of plastic to deal with. Why don't we throw money at you? Huh? How about that? Here's a bribe for your leaders, and a bribe for the middlemen, and a bribe for the other people, and you guys can have some plastic. Oh, garbage. Ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's unbelievable. Back to the article. Also expected Saturday, sessions with so-called outreach countries not part of the G7, but invited by the host nation for discussion on oceans and coastal protections. Trudeau invited Argentina, Bangladesh, Haiti, Jamaica, Kenya, Marshall Islands, Norway, Rwanda, Senegal, I can't say that one, South Africa, and Vietnam. Following the working session, Trudeau will meet with small island developing states, countries grappling with immediate impacts of global warming, and a group of nations which could also be called upon to back Canada's bid for a UN Security Council seat. There's the lead buried in the last sentence, right? That's what's going on here. So it's very interesting watching the G7 unfold. It's very interesting the way this government continually glosses over the failures at the top. We know we have a plastics problem. We know we have a basically an industry built on this Ponzi scheme of selling plastics to third world countries for them to process. This is recycling. And it only averts about 8% of the trash from landfills. Like, it doesn't avert all that much, but it's very expensive. Maybe we could use that money to figure out what to do and how to handle these plastics instead of sending them to third world countries or to China or to other countries in the world to deal with the plastics that we can't deal with at home. And again, I've done an in-depth report on this, I think on my local channel. I'm going to actually look for the link on this one and put it in, because I think it's important to understand that we have a role in this, one, and number two, inaction by the government at the top is actually driving this, and putting a plastic ban in place may relieve some of the plastics ending up in China specifically. Asian rivers are the top 10 polluters of plastics into our ocean, right? But that still isn't going to fundamentally solve the problem if the plastic trade industries is maintained. If we recycle all the plastic that's left, right? Say we ban single-use plastics, but the raspberry containers that we use, for example, are okay, right? Because they're not single-use for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm just saying they use that as an example. I'm just using it as an example. What happens to that? It gets put in the garbage. It gets separated at the recycling bin. It gets sent to Asia, and it doesn't solve the problem. It just continues the problem, making everybody think that they've done something when really they haven't done something. All they've done is removed a small fraction of the waste that they could remove all of it, or a large percentage if most of the world stopped sending its plastics to China to be processed, right? So it's frustrating. And they did the same thing with money laundering. The problem isn't with real estate agents and bankers. The problem is they can't prosecute the money launderers. The money launderers walk. They've had years to build cases that get thrown out at the last minute. So what all you are doing by punishing the bankers and the real estate agents is punishing the good ones, right? And the bad ones are going to do it. And good and bad is such a gray area, right? I mean, that's such a juvenile way to look at things because it becomes gray. You want to eat? Yes. Well, I've got this $9 million property I need to move, and I'm talking to you. Well, okay. Right? If the money launderer is not going to get done, what risk is it to broker it? And really, people are people. They're gonna do what they do. So, man, and I'm not condoning it, but it doesn't make sense to solve the problem in the middle when it's the high level policy failures that are failing by and large. Okay, that's enough for me. Check out thepeoplespartyofcanada.ca. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. It's Monday. I can't believe it's Monday again already. My goodness. Well, I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you for watching.